Welcome to part 6 of our live training session here with our turbocharged BMW M3 running on an EMU black standalone system. In the last few videos, we've completed the calibration process for this vehicle. Now we need to go and check our cold start and operation as the engine is cooled down overnight in our day 2 here of our live training session. So we're gonna be looking at making sure the engine's gonna crank to fire up, making sure that it has appropriate fuel in the after start enrichment and the warm up enrichment, and then allowing the engine to come up to operating temperature and just verify everything is gonna be 100%. We're also going to take a look at setting up our vehicle speed sensor, our gear detection, and our launch control anti-lag feature within our EMU black. So we have a lot to cover. Let's jump into our live training session here so we can get started. Welcome back to our live training session here with our turbocharged BMW M3. Now we're on day 2 of our live training session here, and I've let the engine sit overnight. So we're going to be focusing on cold start, getting the engine to fire up and run properly. Now, on a cold engine, we have poor atomization of the fuel. That leads to reducing the amount of torque production the engine's going to make, specifically at idle. So we're going to find when the engine fires off, if we don't have a little bit more spark advance when we're firing up the engine and we don't have additional fuel, the engine isn't going to idle where we'd expect. Now we have a couple ways around this. We can introduce more airflow, opening our throttle plates a little bit more. We can also have the fuel there and the spark timing to have a combination of everything together to get the engine torque back in line. That's what we're going to try to go and experiment with here in this video. I'm going to talk about a couple tables here in a second, but let's just quickly discuss what's actually going on here with the actual atomization of the fuel. So it's going to have a phenomenon called wall wetting, where the fuel isn't going to get into the engine. It's going to stick to the intake track, into the intake valve. That's part of the poor atomization of the fuel. So it's not going to get directly into the engine and efficiently into the engine as we would find on an engine that's warmed up. So the main VE table represents the engine in the fully warmed up state. When the engine is cold, we have to overcome this wall wetting effect by adding additional fuel. So it's going to be under cranking, we add more fuel. Under after start enrichment, we add more fuel. In our warm up enrichment, that's more of our long-term steady state as the engine's going from, let's say, 20 degrees Celsius up to something like 60, 70 degrees Celsius, getting into the operating range of the engine. We'll find that we need to add some additional fuel and then decay it out slowly. So we're going to have a whole bunch of things to deal with within the video. We're going to be focusing our efforts really on the idle control and on the starting. So the cranking, fuel, after start, warm up, enrichment. That's where we're going to first focus our attention on. Then we can take a look a little bit later in the video after it warms up, some of the other features that we want to cover here in the video, just some miscellaneous things that we haven't talked about and dealt with yet. Let's jump in here and talk about some of the details here that we need to know before we fire off the engine. Now, first things first, if we go here to basic, we can take a look at our intake air temp and our coolant temp. We can see both are reading exactly at 20 degrees Celsius. Now my ambient temperature here in my dyno bay, looking at my dyno tower here, 71 degrees Fahrenheit. The conversion is roughly accurate to what we're seeing in here in Celsius. And in fact, if I go here again to tools and we go to our configuration, we can change our metric units into imperial, which is standard units here, and we can see 68 degrees. So I'm reading 70, it's showing 68, that's fine. Now the reason why I'm checking this is because I don't want to find that one of my temp sensors is completely off compared to the other. They're basically identical to each other. That validates that our scales that we're using here, so the coolant temp scale and the intake air temp scale, these are accurate and they're calibrated right. So if we're finding there was 10 or 20 degrees difference in our Celsius reading on our temperatures here, we would find that one of these tables would be off and we'd have to deal with it. So key on engine off when the engine's cold. We want to see that our temperatures here, intake air, coolant temp, are approximate to ambient, and that everything is good. So that's the first thing to go over here and check. Let's go to configurations. Let's change that back here just into metric units and click OK. Now let's go here into idle and let's talk about this real quick. Now we know under cranking here that we have our duty cycle during cranking. We've talked about this, I believe it was in the second video when we were setting up our idle control. This is what it opens our throttle plates to when the engine's firing up and it's running. So 100% range in our drive-by-wire here, we've set that to 10% total range of throttle plate movement. So 0 to 100 throttle plate movement, we're allowing it only to have 10% maximum in idle control routine, so when we're essentially at idle. And we're going to find that we're using 100% of that. So if we look at our drive-by-wire target and position, 10% is what we're commanding here. That's what it's opening the throttle plate at. Thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here, and you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.